She also has one at the library on 6th Avenue in Santa Fe. And she asked me to read out a poetry, so I brought this to dedicate to her. Because I'm going to tell you something about Carlota. Carlota gets from the heart. And you can't get any better than that. That's some lesson we learned. It's a lesson I learned from a very wise woman who was my mother. And I was a child, and I said, Mom, I got a deal going on. I'm going to help this guy, and in return, I'm going to get this. And she said, Venga aquí, siéntate. Come over here and sit down. And I said, what do you want, Ma? She goes, Hito, when you give something, give it from the bottom of your heart. And don't ask for anything in return. And sometime, somewhere, something will come back to you. Okay? So you do what you're supposed to do, and you'll be okay. Her paintings hang in secular and religious spaces, reminding people of indigenous races. Today we commemorate her living spirit, knowing her murals are also hidden behind fictitious walls in church halls, used to separate instead of congregate flowers from the same garden. She paints stories of obsolescence in disguise, of children with dry eyes, empty wells scorched from burning sun, from historical fears and running tears. She drafts images, immigrants crossing dry deserts with parched throats and fears, historical fears and running tears. She drafts images as immigrants with parched throats in search of a motherland censored from history books, sometimes with nasty looks. And she paints portraits of indigenous populations building pyramids, reaching for the sky. And with her soft brush, she sketches quetzales, famed from destruction from a ruthless nation, losing its human sensation, of jade bracelets covered with blood, as faces lay in the mud, while soft feathers float amidst the air as spiritual danzantes jam in despair. Her lines are geometric spaces in perfect symmetry with the universe reminding us of historical rapes. She paints about poets writing verses while lines become jagged as an imperfect world is turned upside down, landing on a crown of thorns and brutal horns. She painted Catherine y Katrina, two lovebirds dancing in slow motion as wrecked ships sailed across troubled waters to bring Spanish only, a feeling lonely, afraid to mix with other idiomas, later to be scribbled on dusty chalkboards, while the brown horde left its palabra como un broken maraca. We were told to speak English only, and we never once said speak Nahuatl only to anyone. Chicanas came to life on her canvases, only to carry broken crosses as angry bosses offered mediocrity, while silver stars, purple corazones, and medals of honor were pinned on broken hearts as mothers cried from lost sons and daughters who had died crossing salty waters full of fury like cucarachas in a hurry. She paints in her dreams about a wounded civilization anxiously awaiting los remedios de una curandera to heal a wounded nation. She paints flocks of doves with many loves. Una futura, the rainbows with open doors, inviting immigrants to migrate back home, to reclaim dignity with serenity, and to recreate civilizations of honest nations. Her paintings have brought people to their knees to say a prayer, shed a tear, but with the promise to no longer live in fear. She's the community muralist, muy futurista, mixing colors and sizes and forms with the vision to violate unjust norms. Que viva Carlota! Like the thunder before storm, on the left side of the norm, his revolutionary silhouette stood next to Zapata, Villa, y Juarez, soaked by drenching rains of racism and oppression. He shouted reveille, for La Raza. His voice could be heard through megaphones in barrio streets, the sounds of desperation about many generations of pain, a shrill voice llamando la gente to seek out social justice. He had seen merciless killings, the war on Colonia and barrio streets, and he had seen the cries of hungry children suffering from pangs, from bells that rang, shrill noises from church halls, asking la gente to pray. His ears had heard, surrounded by the sounds of solemn tunes, transformed into a fable, calling la juventud to an empty table. He fought from inside a ring, a master at symbolic movement, dancing and swinging and ducking and jabbing. Later, this would become his political style. The ring was a dress rehearsal for a long mile, surrounded by thick rope, dancing in circles, trying to cope. But he came out swinging like a true champion, taking his battles to the streets with no rules, only sweetheart contracts, puppies following their masters, saliva dripping from their forked tongues, whipped into submission for an illusion of status. He cursed the many vendidos wearing white masks, speaking the vernacular of the oppressor, anglicizing their own nomenclature, the Judases of the streets who had lost courage, confronted by the man on street corners, the fence riders disappearing into the middle of the night just before the battle had begun. They were the Teotacos who stood in line like vultures without dignity and cultures, the provocateurs lost in seas of indignation, willing to become inside scouts, drowning in vergüenza from a lack of identity, those who climbed the ladder called success without reaching down to bring los de abajo with them at the expense of la gente locked in prisons, some made of steel, others made of human and mental fiber. His poetry tells a story where we once stood in glory, watching morning stars cross the universe without walls. He led marches on busy urban streets, calling upon la gente from los valles to take off the masks of shame, unshackle the roots of dominance, and reach prominence. His message, written in a polyglot of languages, was about cultural freedom, becoming masters of our universe, poetry without many verses. Today, he honors us with his presence, reminding us to transform thought into action.